Welcome back. We are now on to day 6 of Unit 4. So today's aim is how do molecules move across a cell membrane? So I do want to bring up two just broad categories of transport before we get started. So how do molecules move across the cell membrane? There are really just two ways. Okay, and the first way is passive transport. Now we do know about a few different types of passive transport, but all of those methods mean that molecules are going from high concentration to low concentration, and this does not require energy. Okay, so it's a passive process. Now, the second type of transport that we should know is active transport. And active transport is a little bit different because in this case, molecules are going from areas of low concentration to high concentrations. They're moving against the concentration gradient. And because of this process does require energy. So it requires ATP in order to function. All right, so keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and answer our do now questions. So I want you guys to pause this video, answer questions 1 through 5, and press play when you're ready to review the answers. All right, question number 1. The structure most responsible for maintaining cell homeostasis is the what? So whenever you guys see the word homeostasis, I want you to write down stable internal environment. So how do cells maintain homeostasis? Well, they rely on our friend, the cell membrane. That is what surrounds that outer barrier of the cell and is able to dictate what moves in and what exits the cell. So it maintains a stable internal environment for the cell. Number 2, a cell membrane is made up of what? So in this case, the answer is a lipid bilayer. Remember, we have 2 layers of lipids that make up that cell membrane. So we call it a phospholipid bilayer, 2 layers of fats. Number 3, diffusion continues until, here the answer is equilibrium is reached. Remember when we're talking about equilibrium, we're talking about equal amounts of molecules or equal concentrations of molecules found on both sides of the membrane. Okay, so equal amounts of molecules spread throughout. Remember the word equilibrium looks a lot like equal, right? So that's an easy way to remember it. Talking about equal amounts of molecules spread throughout that surface. All right, number 4. If a cell is placed in salt water, water leaves the cell by what process? So in this case, because we are specifically talking about the movement of water, it's going to be osmosis. So remember, osmosis is diffusion specifically of water. Okay, so it's not going to be diffusion here because no solute particles are moving. Instead, it would be osmosis because water is moving. And number 5, a cell moves particles from a region of lesser concentration to a region of higher concentration by what process? So in this example, we're moving molecules from low concentration to high concentration. So because of that, the answer here is active transport. And again, because we're moving against the concentration gradient, this process requires energy. Remember my picture of the person climbing the mountain. It takes energy to go from low to high. All right, so now let's move on. The rest of today's worksheet is going to be some practice problems, basically asking us to figure out the difference between active and passive transport. So question number 6, which row in the chart below best describes the active transport of molecule X through a cell membrane? Okay, so is it row 1, the molecule moves from high to low concentration and uses ATP? Okay, is it 2, the molecule moves from high to low concentration and does not use ATP? 3, the molecule moves from low to high concentration and uses ATP? Or 4, the molecule moves from low to high concentration and does not use ATP? Well, remember, our 2 characteristics of active transport is that molecules are moving from low concentration to high, and it does require energy, which we know as ATP. So because of that, the answer here is going to be 3. We're moving molecules from low to high concentration, and we're using ATP, or energy. Okay. Next up, we're going to use this diagram for questions 7 through 9. Okay, so we're shown a diagram that represents a cell and several molecules. The number of molecules shown represents the relative concentration of the molecules inside and outside of the cell. Use the diagram to answer questions 7 through 9. So in yesterday's video, or maybe 2 days ago, I'm losing count at this point, I told you guys that whenever you see a question like this, I usually stop and make a chart that shows me what's inside and what's outside of the cell. Okay, so for this one, we're given 3 different molecules. So molecule A I'll represent as blue, and I'm going to count the number of molecule A's inside and outside of the cell. So if we count, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 molecules in, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 molecules out. All right, we're going to do the same thing for molecule B, which is a square. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 molecules in, and 1, 2 molecules out. And we're going to do the same thing one last time for molecule C. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 molecules in, and 0 molecules out. Okay, so I'm going to label those A, B, and C. And we're going to use that diagram for questions 7 through 9. So question 7 says molecule B, which is our square, could enter the cell as a direct result of what process? Is it digestion, diffusion, active transport, or enzyme production? Okay, so the question is asking us, how can it enter the cell? So how can it go inside of the cell? Well, if we look at our chart, in order for those molecules to go inside the cell, we would be going from low concentration to high concentration. So we're actually going against the concentration gradient. All right, hopefully that sounds pretty familiar. We know that if we're going from low to high, that requires ATP, and because of that, this process would be active transport. So the only way molecule B can move into the cell is if energy is provided and it undergoes active transport. All right, number 8, molecule C, which is our triangle, could leave the cell, so go out, as a direct result of what? So we have 7 molecules of molecule C inside and 0, oh no, what happened? Undo. That was bizarre. I don't know what just happened there. Okay, but we have 7 molecules of molecule C inside and 0 outside. The only way that molecule can travel out of the cell is through a process that allows it to go from high to low concentration. So it's going down that slide. That means that no energy is required. So this is an example of diffusion or passive transport. Okay, because we're going down the concentration gradient, going down that slide from high to low, which means that it is passive. So the answer there was 2. And finally, number 9, molecule A is currently in a state of what? So if we look at molecule A, we have the same number of molecules inside as we do outside. They are in equal concentrations. I think I remember a word that means equal concentrations on both sides of the membrane. I wonder what it is. Well, if molecules are found in equal concentrations on both sides of the membrane, that of course is going to be a state of equilibrium. So the answer there was 4. All right, 2 more questions. Base your answers to questions 10 and 11 on this diagram right here, which represents a unicellular organism in a watery environment. There's another word that I taught you guys that means watery environment, and that is the word aqueous. So anytime you see the word aqueous, it means water. It kind of looks like aqua, right? Or agua in Spanish, which both mean water. So aqueous is a watery environment. All right, these black triangles represent molecules of a specific substance. So arrow A right here represents active transport. I'm actually going to do that in red to keep it consistent. All right, so arrow A represents active transport, and that is because we see that molecules are going from an area of low concentration, where there's only 4 molecules, to an area of high concentration where there are, let's see, can I count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 molecules. So they're moving from low to high, which is moving against the concentration gradient. They're climbing that mountain. Okay, and we're asked to state two ways that active transport is different from diffusion. Okay, so there are two ways that active transport is different. The first way is that molecules are moving from areas of low concentration to high concentration. Let me write areas of, oh no, I erased too much. All right, molecules move from areas of low concentration to high concentration. Okay, and the second way that active transport is different is that it requires ATP. So just as it required energy for you to climb up that mountain yesterday, Mount MCSM, it does require energy for molecules to move against that concentration gradient. They're having to climb up that mountain and move from low to high concentration. And of course, question B is asking us, what is the structure represented by the letter B? And that is pointing to this area that surrounds the cell, which is none other than our friend, the cell membrane. Right? Remember, you can also call that the plasma membrane. And now we can even call it the phospholipid bilayer. So it's got a lot of names it can go by. All right, and that is all I have for you guys today. So make sure you are comfortable with the differences between, active and passive transport. Other than that, answer your exit ticket questions and have a wonderful day. Bye guys, I'll see you later.